Welcome everybody, episode 28 of the T121 podcast. Today with us we have another special guest from our staff. We have Patrick Elliott.
Woo!
It's all good news here today. All good news. Before we start, just a couple of disclaimers. Kieran is not here. Don't know why I call him Kieran, never call him Kieran in his life. Kinger is not here, which means that there will be no Who's Your Man. But we are still going to continue our knick-knack of the week. So Morgan, do you want to pull it up there and we'll get this game started?
I'll do it.
Right, this is. I'm gonna give the backstory. Right, so Daly, you might remember this. Do you know what this is? Yeah. Okay. So this is during lockdown, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't. It was a break from lockdown. We were working in Stratford at the time. Some little messer was getting smart about. Oh, I do art. I was like, right. Draw something, bro.
He knows.
He knows.
He
I was
knows.
like, draw something, bro. Do something good. T121 related though. And
He's shaking his head
with a banger. What age would you have been, Finn? You know what it is.
12.
I don't know, like
13.
yeah.
13. Everyone knows the backstory, Finn, does it? That he's been with us for years. Yeah.
I don't know the backstory.
Well, he's been with us for years as a player first, obviously. Then we hired him. This is the photo. I'll show the cameras first. It's a bit dirty because it was out in the podcast studio, the old one. But there you go, man. It's actually very good.
It's G, man.
For a little 12, 13-year-old child, it's very, very
Quality.
good. Yeah, a line with a dodgy enough logo for being 100% transparent. But the line itself is a bit lethal, and again, details, Finn. Orange in the eyes. And when you did it, I thought it was actually really cool. So we'll keep this forever. Thanks very much, Finn. Very cool. And again, art, creative. And I said, could you make it? No problem. Done. Next week. Brings it up. There you go. No messing. We should have known then, Finn.
That actually is true.
On the table. We should have known then that he
Efficiency.
was the man. Efficiency. In, out, and creative.
Very good point. And we were talking about specific knowledge in a school a couple of weeks ago about your innate interests. So, yeah, we definitely saw something there in the early days.
Class, Finn.
Can you still draw? Do you still draw?
Don't.
Why don't you?
Oh no, well, like the last thing I drew was probably my project for junior cert.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I like drawing.
He's too busy
Just
walking.
time, isn't it? Yeah.
Too busy walking.
And you used
Fair.
draw? I couldn't get past stick figures.
No. I can't.
Jeez,
do
no.
this.
I used to
He's
draw
not bad.
outrageous 11v11 matches in stick figures.
Okay,
on
that's
copy
a
pages.
fact. That's a fact.
Wait, what do you mean I
Still
can't
sure.
draw?
Yeah, but I remember you spent like weeks on this like pheasant
You probably have
draw,
a bit about you.
Yeah.
and it was decent. Like it was very nice.
What I found about drawing and creativity, it's just repetition. You become
Of
very
course.
good at drawing one thing if you practice it.
You become good at drawing. I don't think you become very good unless you have it.
Oh yeah, sorry. Disclaimer.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, you're right.
There's
there.
a knick to it for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to
100%.
have it.
It's like
anything,
it's like with
any
football.
skill. Any skill.
You can
have it or you
spend
don't.
your whole life
And
training,
you will never.
doing everything right. You know, it's not gonna always. You're not gonna reach that next level unless you have
Nope.
it. Like
Yeah. No,
But
you're
again, you can
totally
get good at. Good means you're grand at it.
proficient.
Yes, for pretty much anything, which
Yeah.
is cool.
But you don't need to keep drawing, Finn, because your creativity is now in a different scope.
Started
It's
taking
digital.
photos today, yeah.
Yeah, digital creativity, which is
It's
very
it's good to
interesting.
always keep your passions going though, for sure. Like, because even as you're busy, and you know probably more than most, that you lose things sometimes that you really enjoy,
Mhm.
and it's important to keep them going at the same time. You know.
Yeah.
That is true.
We should
Dropping
probably,
dimes, you're only about
we should
20.
probably intro who Paddy is.
Yeah, Paddy!
People are just like,
Yeah.
it's Kinger.
Paddy!
It's Kinger.
I'll throw a spanner in the works. Knick-knack.
Oh.
You have a knick-knack?
Oh yeah, sorry, Patrick does have a knick-knack.
Oh
It's a
my
double
God.
knick-knack.
Taking bleeding
God.
over.
Yeah, it's a double knick-knack.
Oh, wow.
Remember this?
Oh!
What is
This is
that?
I don't know which camera to go to. Yeah.
You can just
All
spin
the
it, bro.
cameras.
Let me
Um,
can I have a look at it.
Yeah. That's
Tackles, no?
that is the Spawell Power League league title trophy. Myself and Gary Biggs years ago played five-a-side with some of my friends from back when I ran. Kevin Woods, shout them all out. Kevin Woods, Sean McCann, James Alexander, Adam Dunn, whom I miss now, Brian Conway in goals.
Keeper.
So good.
Yeah.
Gary, tell me just what's the overwhelming characteristic inherent to that team?
Drive and spirit is what I would say.
Great.
All great. Well, Kev could play, man.
Kev could play.
Kev could play.
And his
He's
brother
very good.
James sometimes, well, maybe when you weren't there, but there's other times when he came in and subbed.
Yeah, Kev could play.
But dirty.
Yeah, I was very surprised. There was a bunch of posh running lads that could kick lumps out of townies. I was very impressed. Great
Yeah.
fun. That was every
Friday night,
yeah.
8 o'clock, and we won 13 matches, lost one out of 14, obviously. And then
Is it 1 game a week?
1 game a week, 14 weeks.
That's so cool. How long are the games? An hour?
50 to an hour, I think. There was a referee in all of them.
Savage.
20
I've
minute and a
never
half,
heard
I
of it.
think.
Like
Yeah.
obviously from yous I would have heard it, but I've never heard anyone else do anything like that consistently.
It was so
That
fun.
was just we'll just
I
go down and
loved
play
it.
fives.
We
Oh,
played the
sick.
Erics in the car on the way. Do you remember
Yeah.
that
Unbelievable
album? Dork
Yeah.
Rock Cork Rod, I think it was.
That album was 2004 or 2006.
Yeah, something
really,
really
old.
old. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mikey Eric played the drums and did vocals.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Anderson Paak does that. Gary, you're a fan of Anderson Paak, aren't you?
Mm.
The drums and vocals. That's amazing to me. Ridiculous. That's a cool knick-knack. I forgot, Morgan. That's probably just a double knick-knack for that one. So
Grand. I'll have to make something up for the next episode, will you? No, sure, I've done mine. You just have to make one. Daily, did you bring anything from your gaff?
I have a knick-knack with me.
No, I don't have a
one
knick-knack.
of the
Oh,
12 things that
Yeah.
Gary has.
Just bring
My
one
laptop.
thing.
I'm my laptop.
Okay. Well, you can talk
I
about
probably
something
have
cool.
something in my laptop
We're
case.
spoiling it.
Here to slate Gary Daly, not bringing a knick-knack. There has to be something in your house. Bro.
He has a list of 12 things in his house, and I'm actually very
That's
impressed.
because I'm not. That's what I mean. Because like all my stuff would be in my parents' house.
Just bring something random out of your car.
It's not like you
and
live
make it.
in another country, bro. They're around the corner.
Oh no! Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Can I just have a look at this trophy?
Mm-hmm.
Paddy,
Before-
as he's
yeah,
looking,
okay.
as we always do with everyone, you know the crack. You listen to the podcast. Brief little background about who you are, age, education, so on and so forth.
Okay, 25. Education. I went to school, so I'm from Lucan. Went to school in Sculwara, up in Early Heights, and really loved that school. Actually, had a really like great childhood memories from that school. Went to secondary school in Lucan Community College. Really hated secondary school. I think I hated I hate authority, and I hate authority for authority's sake. So I can understand if if someone is in a position above you and you're under their direction or whatever. But when it comes to I guess just being kind of authoritative for no other reason other than the fact that you can, I just kind of hated that, and I was a bit of a messer, as everyone in my school will attest to, and probably most of them hated me. But it's funny because I wasn't as you know, I'm not bad in school, that sort of thing. But I really, really, really didn't apply myself. But I could get by just because I'm good at remembering stuff and that sort of thing. So I really it's funny because now I'm doing a PhD. I'm really I'm well educated or whatever, and I enjoy it and blah blah blah. But I really, really hated it back then and didn't give any sort of time towards it. I'm sure we'll talk about later. Running and sport was a big outlet for me that I put over education. But yeah, just really, I think from 4th to 6th year, disaster for me. Mental health wise, was very tough. My self-esteem was on the floor, confidence on the floor, and I think a lot of this behavior acting out was a coping mechanism to some degree. Not giving this whole spiel as if I'm some leading psychologist, but I looking back, I do think that may have something to play. But I wasn't gobshy. You have to sometimes you just have to hold your hands up and say idiot. Yeah. So anyway, finished school there, and I didn't know what to do in life. I'm actually, this is a sidetrack, but Finn is so mature for his age. When I was 18, I finished school, and I was at such a low point in terms of self-esteem, confidence. I couldn't go into a job. I just couldn't fathom how I could do that. Just have the ability to go in and do that, deal with people in the public. So I went to college because I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. Had no inherent interests. Did an arts degree in Maynooth. I did English and German because I was good at English in school, even though I actually turned out to be my worst result in the Leaving Cert, even though up to that point I was doing well. And I did German because I thought it'd be cool to be fluent, because I actually liked German in school as well. And then I did ancient classics because Philip did classics,
Yeah.
And
he
he was like the Greek mythology and stuff he's mad into. So I did that for 10 weeks. Left. I hated Maynooth.
I know.
Lads,
you
I'm
did.
sorry.
I know. You did. I know. You did.
You don't need to come to me with that one. I went to college minutes as well.
It was like leaving school and just going to
School.
down the road. So I knew everyone there, and I was left school, and I was I did not want to see them all again. Not that there's anything bad at the people, but just my own kind of. I wanted something new.
Mm-hmm.
So not to hit the microphone. Dropped out of that, and then I had another bit of a crisis, and I was right, I need to kind of figure out what I like in life. So I decided to kind of go back to my roots, which was sport, and I got interested in learning about sports physiology, exercise science, that sort of thing. So I went for sports science at DCU, which I really enjoyed. I think, looking back, I suppose even from first, second year in college, I knew that like the kind of exercise science route isn't where I ultimately wanted to be, but I was interested in the process of science, that sort of thing, critiquing science. But I really got interested in nutrition science, and I think from, I'd say like second year on, I kind of tried to like tailor my CV and experience towards nutrition to try and like go and study further after my degree and get into it like a master's in some sort of area of nutrition. So in third year I went to America. I went to Washington DC and I did an internship there for 3 months in a clinical nutrition lab, and we worked on like a randomized controlled trial of a plant-based diet, like a low-fat vegan diet versus Mediterranean diet for overweight in overweight individuals, and the primary outcome was body weight. So I helped with that. I got to co-author a paper over there, and that kind of solidified the fact I want to go down the kind of academic kind of research route. When I came back fourth year, I did my final year thesis in nutrition knowledge of GAA players. And I did that with Dr. Brendan Egan, who is a legend. Shout out Brendan. Such a legend. Like, honestly. I don't know if you had experiences. You did a master's, you probably did a
I
thesis.
think he gave me a guest lecture
He
in my
probably
master's in UTD. Yeah.
He's fantastic.
I recognise him.
Such a great guy. Like, not just an academic, but like a really good guy. And like, I'd send him like a draft, and 3 hours later he'd have it back with like all the edits. I said to him recently, because I was in DC recently doing a study. I was a participant in one of his studies, and he's like, yeah, people say that to me, you know. And I was like, bro, it's fucking deadly, like, you know. So he was very helpful. He gave me a bit of insight into what I might want to do as a master's, because I was like, oh, I have these interests, blah blah blah. So I ended up doing a master's in public health with a major in nutrition in UCD, and that was last year. Thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, I really took it seriously. Like, so in DCU, in my undergrad in sports science, you know, like a golden week in college where you go to every lecture. 4 years, 1 week went to every lecture. Like, horrendous attendance. You know what I mean? From third year on, I was better, but like even still, I was still kind of dragging my heels. And then in the masters, I really like put the work in and did well. And yeah, even like doing my master's dissertation, I'm just about ready to publish 2 papers from that, which has been an ongoing project since the summer till now. It's November now, so I have 2 of them under review with different journals at the moment, so really happy with that. And then to the present day, started a PhD in nutrition in UCD in September. So that would my project is concerned with sustainable and healthy dietary patterns, and I will be eventually doing some sort of interventions, essentially trying to change students' dietary behaviours towards more sustainable and healthy kind of dietary patterns. So right now, just doing a lit review on that, just immersing myself into literature on dietary behaviour, essentially, which is interesting. And yeah, and outside of that, I guess I do a little bit of science communication, obviously. why I'm with T121, but also on my Instagram, I do a bit of stuff. I've been actually slacking on it a little bit lately because I have a lot of different things going on. But yeah, I'm very, very interested in that, which I'm sure we'll get into later on. That was a monologue. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That was a great.
I could just keep going, but yeah.
That was a good intro.
It was as smooth as they come for intros. Yeah. Typically, the layout that we have for these interviews is just going question by question. But if things kind of unravel themselves in a nice way, we might stay on topic. But do you want to start with a question, Gary, and then we'll move from there?
Yeah. I kind of want to get into the running stuff, and then I actually have a question on what you talked about. When did you stop taking running very serious?
15.
So would that been kind of the time when you said after TY, fifth? Is that around that age? Is that kind of linked to the whole school thing, do you reckon, or?
100%.
Yeah.
So I finished running. So for background, I started running at 6. I ran competitively, like at a very high level, up till I was 15. It's kind of similar to you with the football. We had a very similar trajectory, actually, didn't we?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Like, really
much,
similar trajectory. It was my whole life. It was my entire identity. It was everything I ever did, and it was all I wanted to do until it wasn't. So
yeah,
it was very much. As I said, it was my whole life. Everything I did in life was structured around it. Whether I went out with friends, it was, oh shit, don't get injured, can't play football with the lads. I still do it and stuff, but I'd always be conscious what I kind of time I went to bed at, just anything and everything. It was all running, and I was very good. I'd won the Dublin Championships. I'd say I probably won about I don't know, like 10 to 12 of them maybe. I don't know, like there was cross country, track, all the way from 600 meters when we were younger. That was like long distance, all the way up to 3,000 meters. I would have won Dublin Championships. I would have placed top 3 in the nationals from like, I think the first time I did was like under 11. So I would have been 9, because in running it's a little bit different in football. And then like my last race ever, I was second in the nationals in the 3K, and then I quit straight after. But yeah, so when I quit, that was funny actually, because I came back from a bad injury the year before, and I came back and I didn't have that much training.
A bad injury was 2 years.
No, it was a year. Yeah.
Oh, a year, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I came back and I won the Dublin 1500 meter, won the 3000 meters on track, and then I was second in the national 3000 meters, and then I gave up like the next week, because I went out with the lads and had a drink. Beer door. Yeah, so that was, and I think my mental health went down the toilet after that. I didn't have anything to get up for in the morning.
That's kind of weird, because you mentioned how when you were growing up, how like you seen sport as an outlet, like people tend to do, and I find it interesting that when you found your school was tailing off, then the running went as well. So rather than it being a coping mechanism for the school, it went out the window essentially as well. So I just find that interesting, the way that like usually the sport is what you would keep doing as an outlet as the school gets worse. But it seems like they both kind of just left at a similar enough time. Like, yeah.
I'm not sure if it's causation between the two. One happens, the other happens. But I think potentially, or at least in some part, because I unfortunately put my entire identity into running, which is really bad in hindsight. Like, you know, these days I really try not to have an identity really in any way, if that makes sense, because I think it keeps me more grounded and centered. You know, they don't affect me as much then. If things go wrong and different things, it's just water off your back, you know. But that's taken a long time to get to that point. But with the running leaving, I had nothing to get to feel good about, and my confidence just went so far down, and I just couldn't get it back. Do you know what I mean? And I felt like I had nothing. So I was like, I did a little bit of football.
With the lads.
Didn't show up one day for a match. That was it. Bit of basketball, but like I could never recapture that kind of feeling. Do you know? And it really just, at that time, I think it's a really critical time in like a teenager's life, you know. As I said, Finn is like nothing like I was or what most people were at that age. You know?
Most people still are at that age.
Yeah, and it's very hard. Like, I just found it really hard to cope in school. I found it hard. I was extremely nervous, and people would think I'm a real outspoken personality and stuff, and everyone thinks I'm so confident and stuff, but I was like doing that bravado nearly sometimes in class, like trying to get thrown out of a class because I'm like so anxious that I can't be in the class. You know, or if someone asked me to say something like public speaking or something, like as a kid I would have been really good at that. Like I would have, because it was just confidence, and I used to get a confidence from running. Maybe people telling you you're good, I don't know what it is, but I just lost that. And instead of like, if I had to do a presentation, the teacher would, like, if I knew it was coming up, I would just like throw something across the room, or I'd like just start screaming, like messing, and I'll just sort of kick me out of the class and send me to the principal's office, just so I didn't have to do something like that. So it was a bit of a coping mechanism as well. But yeah, it's definitely are linked for sure.
That's crazy. I have a question. So at the time when you were like 15, and obviously you stopped the running, and then all the other stuff at school and whatever, you probably didn't feel right. Would you describe yourself as like self-aware at the time, where you could see this happening, or was it a case where you were just floating day by day and you hadn't a clue what was actually going on?
I wouldn't say I saw it. No. I was really happy to not be running. I'll say that. I was burnt out at 15. Like there was too much pressure on me as a child and stuff, I think, which is like, it's, my dad like was very heavy, like your dad as well, you know, and I think he got better over time with that because he realized, but I think the damage was kind of done, and I just felt like I wasn't doing it for myself. Do you know what I mean? I was doing it for someone else, and I just wanted to take the ownership and not do it. But obviously, like, there's the knock-on effects, but I don't regret any of it, like, at all, because I feel like that my track, if everything had went swimmingly, I mean, I would have maybe went on. I think I was good. Like, I don't think I was as good as what I maybe thought I was. I think I could have went on, done okay throughout my 20s or whatever, and maybe then finished up and had not much behind me. You know, so I'm actually kind of happy where I'm at, like in terms of career trajectory and what I'm really enjoying what I do, and I get to see the benefits from it in sports. Sport's a hard game. Running's a really hard game. you get about 99% of the time it's like down, and you get that 1% up. Do you know what I mean? Especially as you're older. As a kid, it can be a little bit different. Like it was for me. I had good times, but
The pool gets
Yeah.
bigger as you get older because you start to
100%.
not just nationally, you start to race internationally, and you're like, geez, I'm actually not that good as I think I am, which is
and
crazy.
I was saying to you the other day that juvenile success doesn't necessarily predict senior success either. I see that like anecdotally through the people who I ran with who were good, who were even some people who were like really good, like prodigies, just aren't there. And maybe they just stopped running or whatever, but some kept running and they're still not as good. You know, some people develop later, all that sort of stuff. So you can't hinge, oh, it's going to be this, or it's going to be that. You never know. Anyway, why worry about it? I don't actually want to do that now anyway. So if I had been so good and went somewhere, would I be happy? I don't know. I'd probably be like, oh, missed out on like 10 years of like going out and all because I never got to do that and stuff, you know, even though I don't particularly love that, at least I experienced it, you know. So what can you do?
I think there's like such an important lesson in there, taking it purely to where we are, or what we do. Sorry, with football and all, you can see it obviously with parents and with players themselves. You talked a lot about like the identity side of it, and you didn't want to have that one identity. I know we'd obviously always preach that to people. You like taking 16, 17, 18-year-old, you're not a footballer. Like if you only pigeonhole yourself into that mold, it's so easy to get bogged down by one bad performance. You know, that kind of way. You rely too much on it, like you said. Whereas you've got to be able to separate that and realize that. I know you said like not that you don't want to have an identity, but I think you like want, what would you say, more well-rounded. Where it's like, I'm not just a runner. I'm not this. I'm not like you've so many elements to your life. You know,
this is like integral to a lot of things because like I'm speaking of running now, but like for example with nutrition and stuff, like if I just even speak a little bit on that with identity when it comes to a dietary pattern that you may eat or whatever, can cloud your judgment then when you're actually looking at evidence and you're trying to appraise it. And you know, it's not a recipe for success. And if you are a footballer and that's your whole identity, what happens when you, as you said, what happens when you have an injury? What happens if you don't play well? Does your whole life go down the toilet? Why does it matter? We're just these beings on a planet. Do you know what I mean? Like Jesus Christ. Do you know what I mean? It's just a game. Everything means nothing. We're all gonna be dead soon.
like
Peace.
yeah.
Seriously though.
No, but yeah, like your identity should more be the principles you live your life through, not the like sort of like sport and like work and all. They're not, what would you say?
They're not
They're like
integral
paths
to like,
in life,
yeah,
but your principles of your life. So like your behaviors, your
How you
attitude
act-
toward
how you
other
act
people
with
and things
people.
like that.
That's much more important.
Say what?
How you act with people.
Oh yeah,
You know what I mean? Like these are the things that are important in life, in my opinion. But anyway,
I can't believe I just said say what to you now. Say what?
No, I think that's spot.
Quick
That's a
running
good
related question. Do you run now, like just
Yeah.
casually, and do you kind of have that more love for it again, or is it kind of something enjoyable, or what is it to you now, or what's your relationship?
So
with
I
it now?
stopped running for 15 till 22. Like I never, like I'd run like if I was playing five. But I never went for a run. Like I went for a run maybe once every year or something. It's funny, I'd still have it, like, you know, I'd still run out and do like a 10k in like
I know.
in like
I've been
30,
there
Could you?
38 minutes or
Oh,
something.
ridiculous.
Off no training for like,
ridiculous.
just go out
That's
and do it.
crazy, just because your body, and just because
genetically
you've
Paddy's
trained
very
it as
well.
well for the years.
Well, I'm also like, I also do think though, because I was training like a while ago through COVID with like, I was really training hard. I was training about 16 hours a week. So what's that like? I was training 6 days a week, about 16 hours, so 2 or 3 hours a day.
yeah.
But between everything I did, and I was training with but I couldn't run a lot. And this is essentially the last 3 years I've had Achilles tendinopathy in both Achilles tendons, so it's been really tough with injuries. But I was trying my best, and I was running with the Dublin Track Club guys, and it's just funny, like, because even though I like have a decent bit of fitness, all that last time and stuff, like I'm so far off it, so far off them. You know, those guys like the likes of like Brian Fay, who was it yesterday? What day is today? Tuesday.
Monday.
On the weekend.
It was Monday, you might think.
Is it?
Yeah.
Sorry, it was yesterday then, or the day before. He's after run 13:16 for 5k, broke the national indoor record.
Ridiculous.
And
No,
he-
look,
he
handed that in his car.
to say something about Brian Fay, he wasn't like a prodigy. I don't know when he started running. I think it was secondary school, but he wasn't like that. Like no one looked at him and said he's going to be so good or something. And in the last like 4 years or so, he's just gotten so good. But like when I'm looking at some of the guys, Andrew Koskeren, Hiko Tenosa, these guys train, and I'm just so far off it. Like all those years lost. And even if I was to have the perfect training for the next 5-10 years, I don't like, would I ever get to their level? I'm not sure. They're so good, you know. What was the question? Where am I going with that?
Because you started back into running with the drum.
Sorry.
track club.
Yeah, so I was
yeah.
saying, what's your relationship with it like now?
Now I just do it for fun. I've actually recently, the last 2 months, I've been training with DSD, Dundrum, South Dublin. My old coach from years ago, Don Hennigan, which I loved. Like, I loved the running atmosphere back then. I loved my group. I just grew tired with the sport itself, but I loved like that cohesion, and I just loved the whole social part of it more than anything. And I've actually, the last 2 months, they trained UCD on a Wednesday, and I was walking by one day and I just saw him and I was chatting to him. So every Wednesday now I've been training with them. And some of the people I used to run with, like, are there, like, not that many, but a few of them, and it's been so fun. I love it.
So you have that, like,
Yeah, but I don't have
background.
any competitive. You know why? Because I'm too busy with other things, and I put my focus now into academia, my papers, into science communication online, and I just don't have the time. I also have a relationship, my girlfriend. You know, like, you got to balance all these things. I don't have the time for the run, and also I tried to, like, come back through COVID and stuff, and I've had just persistent injuries. I've never had more than 3 months without being able to, like, do something without having some sort of injury in the last 3+ years. So it's just not viable for me. And I do everything right. I do all the exercise. I spend thousands with SSE, Colin Griffin, who's just, like, wrapping up his PhD in this exact injury. He's the head of lower limb rehab there. Jesus. And he's got me back, like, to a good level, but, like, I can't do any more than a set amount. So now I just do way less.
Yeah.
But look, who knows? Maybe I'll get back into a bit more, but never to the level where I, like, want to be the best or whatever. No. That's the chapter's done, you know.
I was Patrick helped me find love running, right? Over COVID as well. But I remember him telling me a story when we were kids. I don't know if you remember this. I only came back from there when you were talking. I think it was me and Morgan outside. You just came back from a cross country race, and I said, "Geez, that looks so tough in the mud." He goes, "Like, yeah, no, it is." And he said something that resonated with me. And I was on a run last week, and it rang back in my head straight away again. He goes, Patrick goes, "When I run up hills, I go intentionally quicker for the people behind me to let them know that I had more in the tank." He used to run up the hills more intense. He said he'd be coming down the hill nearly crying in pain, but he used to run up the hill
In, like, a
to,
race, you would.
So
destroy
hard.
their souls. And I was running up a hill thinking the same. I was like, "Oh my god, my chest is burning." I was like, "This fucker is just, like, up the hill trying to take some souls behind him." That summarized your mindset pretty cool as well, man, because that was one of my main questions, was that you were obsessed with running. You're obsessed with doing better for yourself. Where do you think that intensity of focus has come from?
I think, like, it comes from the running, from being in that environment, like a high performance-y kind of mindset from the age of 6. Like it really was like that, because my dad was brilliant, and he had a motorbike crash at 19 and essentially could never really run properly again. And he had, like, 5 scholarships to the US lined up, and he was like, he ran a 66-minute half marathon at 19, which is, like, I think it's, what's it, 3:10 per kilometer for 21k or something at 19,
Christ.
or 3:05 per kilometer. Or
Any
something,
chance?
something
Leo?
like that.
worst
It's
nightmare,
5:05 a mile. So if someone wants to calculate what that is, kilometers, like 3:10 or something. I don't know, 3:08 maybe. And he kind of, which he acknowledges now, is like, he nearly kind of lived his career that he didn't have through me as a kid, if that makes sense. So he wanted me to be that good and all this because it was nearly him. He never had that. Like, he lost it all, and it's haunted him, like, his whole life, if that makes sense. So I think that kind of drive comes from just being in that environment from a young age. I also think sometimes these things are genetic, and sometimes like there's a lot to say for environment. Like, there is a lot to say being in an environment like that. But sometimes you don't know. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I really don't. And sometimes it's not a good thing either. Like, sometimes, like, I've gotten better at this over the last, like, year, I'd say. But, like, I couldn't do enough, and you're never satisfied, and it's really terrible. Because, like, why bother doing anything then if you're never happy? So now I really have a better mindset, but I still struggle a bit. But, like, I'm not out to be, like, the most productive person in the world. I'm just trying to get through my day these days, you know, and be relatively happy and try and be happy. But I do think, like, there are some of these things may be genetic. I don't know. I know that, like, there was a recent study, which I don't know too much about because it's not really my area, but there was, I think, a twin study. So essentially, like, looking at the influence. Twin studies are used for looking at the influence of environment versus genetics for certain factors that showed that, like, self-control was, like, 60% heritable through genes. So do you know what I mean? So sometimes we I don't think we give enough credit, and I think we can do, you know, this is because I did XYZ. I don't know. You know what I mean? It could be an amalgamation of factors. But I do think, like, having growing up in that environment certainly would have helped.
Very interesting. the running side is like if anybody has ran properly for a sustained amount of period, I'm not just saying like doing a 10k every week, but I mean, you know, let's say if you're doing 30-mile weeks or like 50-mile weeks, the test that has on you mentally, I think running is definitely one of the things that if the whole world done it, the world would be a much better place for what it clarifies internally. And that sort of runner's high. I remember like saying to you all the times, like I'm never gonna not stop running now, which was a great thing. But I mean,
Great habit.
that took me like I always went too hard, too quick all the time and crashed and burned. Whereas now, when you just go in, like I remember you were saying, well, just do 1k or just do like do 2k and do it slowly, and then you build a love of the marginal progress.
That's probably what people do a lot wrong with running in that sense. They don't do it.
so.
Like I would have done that as well. Like
Everyone does it.
yeah,
Like legit. Like I was talking to someone last week, and they were saying like every time they go for a run, it's like it's just torture, blah blah blah. But then he said they got over that hump after a while, where all of a sudden they actually have the fitness to go out and not be like dying. You know, so they can go out and actually get to a point where they're actually running and they're like, wait, like you get that kind of flow state. At least I do. I'm not going to say everyone does. And I'm sure, like, for example, when it comes to gym stuff, I hate it. Like, I hate lifting weights. I hate it. I used to do it more. When I stopped running, I started, like, lifting a bit more. I remember I put on, like probably, like, 20 kilo.
Yeah, I remember,
Like that would, a lot of that was fat, too. But I put on a huge amount of weight because I was really skinny, like, as a runner. I didn't really eat much, which is, like, the opposite to who I am now in terms of eating. But I put on a huge amount of weight and did a lot of lifting, like, in kind of 16, 17. And like I still didn't love it. I hated it. I hated my body, so I really wanted to change it. Do you know? So I really had the desire to change it. But yeah, like I don't know. I will never get to that point where I like the gym. I fucking doing it again. I hate it. So maybe some people won't get the runner's high. Maybe it's just not in them. I don't know. Maybe some people will. But I do think it's a good thing for health. I mean, cardiorespiratory fitness is really important. I remember there was a study of, I think it was Tour de France athletes. They look at the average time of death versus general population, and they live like 14 years on average longer. Like now they're the extreme in the athletic spectrum in terms of endurance sports, but like it's cardiorespiratory fitness is like one of the best predictors of long-term essentially when you die. So like longevity essentially. So it's extremely important. Even if you hate it, find a way to enjoy it in some way or another.
Yeah,
that'd be my kind of advice.
that's interesting. Can I go into a question here on nutrition? Or
Go for it.
I thought you had other questions.
No.
One of the questions that I had was because there's a big football audience here, what would be like the main things that you would say to young players about nutrition and sport?
Just for sport?
Actually, that's a good counterpoint. I think sport's just one aspect. Talk about life then, more importantly than sport.
I thought this might come up in some facets. So, for performance, I mean, there's evidence-based recommendations over, let's say, carbohydrate intake. It's, no doubt about it. If you're a footballer, if you are doing any sorts of moderate to high intensity sport, carbohydrates are the optimal fuel for performance. It's not contestable. There may be, for people doing like ultra endurance sports and that sort of thing, there may be a role for some people who prefer like a higher fat diet. Doesn't necessarily mean it's better. It just means it might suit their stomach better, that sort of thing, which comes into play with those sports. But for any sport that has moderate to high intensity exercise, carbohydrates are your number one fuel. And if you want to learn more, training1to1.com/blog. First 3 articles all about carbohydrates. Anyway, get that in there. So look, we can go down that route and all that, but I want to talk about, there is performance and then there's health, and then some people think they're mutually exclusive. So if just fueling for performance is it's going to fuel that doesn't necessarily look after the health side of things. While that can be true, it doesn't have to be the case. So I would actually be more, because I come from, I did public health, masters, and like I guess I kind of come from that health side of things as well. But I do have the performance kind of knowledge as well. But I think there's a way to get these two things balanced. So I think, like, for example, if I was to give some practical tips, obviously I think carbohydrates are important, blah, blah, blah. If you're eating, let's say, Cocoa Pops for breakfast as your cereal, high in carbohydrates, you're having, I guess, white bread with jam, whatever, bagel, white bagel, white rice, blah, blah, blah. I would say one of your biggest things you can do is actually swap a lot of them things with whole grain equivalents. So instead of having your Frosties in the morning or whatever, You could have maybe a bowl of porridge. There's a lot of great things about porridge. Like, it's one of the best foods in terms of starting your day. And just that kind of increasing your whole grain intake. Going to increase your fiber intake. Soluble fiber is good for lowering cholesterol levels, good for long-term cardiovascular risk and all sorts of things, but you're still looking after that performance side of things by getting the amount of carbohydrates you need in. So I would look at it as trying to hit both of them. And other things like having some fruit before and after training, because beforehand you want to stock up them fuel stores, your glycogen in your muscles, and after training it's very important to replenish them. So within the first half an hour, instead of having your sports drink or instead of having just some bar or whatever, just have a banana, have an apple, and then have a nice meal when you go home, you know, with maybe some whole grain pasta. Even things like for protein sources, I think a good idea is to diversify your protein sources. I think, you know, for a general healthy diet, I think basing it in a lot of whole foods, a lot of whole plant foods is a good strategy for long-term health. And I think for protein, it doesn't have to always be like, let's say, an animal protein source. I think you can mix that up a bit. And things like, I know you like beans, lentils, that sort of thing.
Oh, Gary knows that well, don't I, Gary?
Lentil ball, nice chat, show out, ma.
But it's you know, once you hit a certain amount of protein, about 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight, the source of protein doesn't really matter in terms of the performance outcomes that we want to see. So that's muscle gain, strength gain, recovery, that sort of thing. We don't tend to see any difference in terms of protein sources. So it's important to not just focus on something that's like high protein, but mightn't necessarily facilitate long-term health.
Yes.
So, for example, like a chili, you could swap half of it for beans, maybe half a lean beef or something, or you could, you know, that's a good way to start if you wanted to do 1 day a week or something where it was a little bit more plant-based or something like that. I think that'd be a good idea for long-term health, but also looks after performance. And as I said, there's all sorts of different things in those type of foods, whole grains, legumes, that are very beneficial for health. But one other thing I'd say, just for a health point of view, would be like nuts and seeds. Very important for it's essentially they're full of unsaturated fatty acids, very good for the lipid profiles, your cholesterol, that sort of thing, and are associated with reduced risk of things like cardiovascular disease and even like lower body weight and stuff, because unsalted nuts are quite satiating and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think like Irish people don't eat enough of that, and just adding a bit in like your porridge in the morning or something would be good for health as well. But just some practical tips.
Very. And high level too. Easy to digest.
Mm-hmm.
Literally and
Go
figuratively.
on, your good thing, yeah.
I did not mean that. That'll apply. Very interesting. I think just as like, I don't mean to plug us, but your content on our website blog is really easy to digest, but also at the same time, the data provided, the graphics, the graphs, and the literature that you are using from specific journals, I think are very credible, and there's a lot of learnings to take there if you are willing to apply yourself to them, which is great. So I think that's a good resource for people to learn more. And obviously we'll plug the Instagram after as well, just to make sure that people understand where these resources are. I mean, there's no excuses for people now in this digital age. There's just so much good content if you know who to follow.
That's the thing. I will say it is like, because there's a huge amount of misinformation on social media. There's a huge amount of charlatans and quacks and people who are just there to make money, or even people who they aren't necessarily there just to make money, but they're just completely wrong. Do you know what I mean? I know it's like, but unfortunately, scientific literacy is not really that great. And these guys, they know how to latch on to essentially to grow their following. And a lot of them, as I kind of said, alluded to, they have their supplement company or whatever, and then they've got all their affiliated links and blah, blah, blah. So they're there to make a buck as well. But there's a lot of grifters out there, and it's hard to discern. If you do not have scientific training, it's very difficult to discern like the difference between someone who's a practitioner or someone who's talking about these sort of things on social media, who's respecting the evidence base, and those who aren't. And believe me, I've been sucked down every hole. That sounds so wrong. but like, legitimately, it's very, very difficult, and it took me so long. I'm about six plus years trying to wrap my head around scientific evidence and how to balance different types of study designs and how they can all tell you something about different kind of research questions, and then ultimately how to put that all together to have it like a position on a particular question. And it's very, very difficult. There's different ways you can go about it, but unfortunately, like, you are reliant on coming across people who are literate in these areas and who respect the kind of the evidence I will say there's things to look out for. I think when people make bold claims, huge red flag. The evidence in certain areas like for example with LDL cholesterol, so it's a type of cholesterol is the cholesterol in the LDL particle, and LDL itself is like the little car. Cholesterol is like this passenger, and that kind of particle can get into your artery wall and cause a thing called atherosclerosis, which is the plaque in your arteries.
Oh, okay.
So if that builds up over time, you can have a heart attack.
Yeah.
So just to give an example, when it comes to LDL and cardiovascular disease, there is a consensus in the literature among lipidologists that LDL particles cause atherosclerosis. And that's been written in the European Atherosclerosis Society's consensus papers. To get a bunch of scientists together to actually come together and say something is consensus means the evidence underlying that particular topic is really strong. So I can be pretty confident. I'm okay to, like, in terms of I understand the evidence base in that particular area. So if I say, like, I can say with confidence that causes that, right? But generally speaking, with a lot of things in nutrition and health, it's not that simple. But when you see these people, gluten causes this.
Oh, yeah.
You know, this will cure cancer, whatever. And you do see this everywhere. Medical medium, celery. What does he say? Celery cures cancer or something. I don't know. Anyway, gobshite. But you see this all around. So that's a huge red flag. So just watch out for that.
Is a nice high level way to say it.
Bold claims. It's a massive red flag. And we see this all over social media. But it is, circling back, it's difficult. It is difficult.
Yeah, is that, like, with health and fitness, is that because of how every single human is designed differently and how hard it is to control studies?
Well, I will say that, first of all, things like social media, they amplify content that's shocking. I think there was a study a couple of years ago found that those sorts of posts that have the highest, like, emotional effect get, like, shared like 20% more or something like that. And maybe you kind of butchering that statistic a little bit, but it's something like that. And of course, like, there is individual variation in a lot of things. And then people go, well, this happened for me, and the guidelines or something say that, so therefore they're wrong. But the actual, when you look at population, so there's a thing called individual response to something, and then population kind of like outlook on how to, like, for example, give dietary guidelines, whatever, where these recommendations come from. It's a population health perspective. So that means that you and I could have an inter-individual difference in how we react to, let's say, saturated fat. If I eat, let's say, 15% of my calories from saturated fat, I might have an increase in cholesterol by 20%. You might do the exact same thing, and, like, everything else in your diet's the same, and yours goes up 1%, or doesn't move, or goes down. That is reconcilable with what we know about saturated fat and cholesterol. However, on the population level, it's going to go up, and we can predict that. There's equations for that. There's the Keyes equation, there's a Hegseth equation to predict that, and it's very, very robust. And this is because we have evidence from metabolic ward trials where you literally lock people into a facility, you feed them X amount of saturated fat, you watch how the cholesterol goes up, and you can predict it on a group level, right? And that's where the recommendations come from. You'll get some grifter who'll be like, well, I know someone or whatever, you know, who's dropped, and therefore it's all wrong, blah, blah, blah. And I'm kind of making a bit of a caricature, but, like, there is real nonsense like that out on social media. And it's just a fundamental misunderstanding about what these recommendations are for, you know? It's a population health perspective.
Yeah, fascinating.
And in terms of controlling studies, so when it comes to, like, so there's different types of studies. There's a randomized control trial, which is when you have an overall group, you split them into two or more groups, and it's a random thing. And what you do is you bring people in who are relatively similar cohort, you randomize them. The whole reason why you randomize is to minimize bias, which means that everyone in each group is going to be roughly similar along all these different things that can affect the outcome of something like age. So you don't want one group who's, like, really old versus one group that's really young. That might change how things happen in a study. Blah, 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 blah. That's it. Like, there's many studies with randomized control trial evidence on different things that show a certain conclusion, and they're pretty well controlled. But where you get people who say there's, like, problems with research, it's all based on epidemiology, and let's say, for example, red meat or something, well, those eating red meat, they're eating hamburgers, and they also don't exercise, and they also don't do this, and they also don't do that, and they drink more because those who eat hamburgers aren't healthy. That's not reconcilable if you actually go into the data, because there's a thing called statistical adjustment, So in the majority of these studies, they're adjusting for the factors that may confound the relationship, which means may alter your conclusions. So, for example, if you look at someone eating 100 grams of red meat per day, and then you compare to in the same cohort someone who's eating 0 grams of red meat per day, the majority of the studies would adjust for factors like age. So the effect that age would have on whatever outcome you're looking at, let's say cardiovascular death, they'll adjust for the average effect of that.
Mm-hmm.
They'll adjust for sex. So because females, males have different responses to these sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
They'll adjust for socioeconomic status. They'll adjust for physical activity levels. They'll adjust for smoking levels, alcohol levels, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they won't adjust for everything because we don't know everything that confounds a relationship, but the majority of them we do. And people throw it out without even reading the methods. And also, a lot of these recommendations are done in different populations. And if you're seeing a consistent effect in this population versus this population versus this population using these techniques, it's pretty robust findings. You know what I mean? So a lot of the arguments against it really are just from people who aren't literate on the subject.
Yeah.
And I'm just using that as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Red meat and let's say like colorectal cancer.
Yeah.
In a certain contrast of intake, 0 versus like, I don't know the exact precise, maybe like 100 grams per day, you do see that effect. But if you look at 200 versus 400 grams a day, you mightn't see the effect. And then someone goes, look, doubled in red meat intake doesn't affect colorectal cancer risk. Yes, because it's not at the thresholds where it does. These are all reconcilable by people who understand the literature. So that's just a bit of a tangent, but it just shows that when it comes to nutritional science in general, there's certain, I guess, there's a certain domain knowledge you need in it to make valid conclusions from the data. And that's why people who are good in other areas, they come over here and they make a lot of erroneous conclusions because they don't have that domain-specific expertise. A guy called Alan Flanagan, who's, I think, at the Nutritional Advocate on Instagram, he's a fantastic science communicator. His stuff is more geared towards those like me who are professionals in this area or aspiring professionals in this area. He had a post recently, essentially, expertise is narrow. Essentially was the essence of the post, and talking about how people who may be good in one area come over to nutrition and think just because they're good at whatever else, biology, neuroscience, pick a field, just because they can interpret that literature, they can come over and talk as if they're an authority in this topic. They're not.
Yeah, that's
a
great point. Great. I fell victim to that a few times.
I'm not going to go and tell a neurosurgeon what to study on neuroscience. You know what I mean? Like there's intricacies in the literature that you need to be familiar with in order to make valid conclusions from the literature. And that's a big thing.
That was class. I was glued there. I was absolutely glued.
Mm-hmm. That was
I love academics. I love academia. I love research. Such an interesting way to operate. Do you have another question there, Gary?
No, we've kind of covered all what I was going to ask, I think.
Yeah. Awesome. Did you have one, Morgan?
Not really, no. I was just interested in listening.
Yeah,
you could talk about you could spend 4 or 5 hours talking about that stuff, and you're like,
well,
there's so much in it.
Much more than one time. I'll tell you that now.
Yeah,
so
there's a lot of value to bring there, especially when you get into more sports specific stuff. Although the overall health is more important than sport, as we said earlier.
I think that
was interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point, and kind of what Gary was saying there about and what you were saying, Patrick, as well about being a part of your identity, and people like, oh, like what's the nutrition that's going to help the football? Well, you're not going to be playing football when you're 42 years of age, like at the same level you are now. So what are the long-term games that you can play? Everybody needs to eat, everybody needs to drink, everybody needs to sleep. So why not, when you're discussing about these things, how come they can't be in unison between performance and also your life outcomes?
They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's so important. And I don't think people really have those conversations a lot. Because anytime that I see anything about health nutrition, it's more so about performance. It's never really about the long-term gain that is life. So I always found that interesting. But I had one question that was away from the health, nutrition, science, running part, and it is simply, what is one thing you like about your personality?
I like that I'm principled. I like that I have I think I've guiding principles that guide my everyday life. I think like I'm an honest person. I don't think I don't think I'd ever sell out for money or whatever. I would forego riches to be honest to who I am, and like even bring it back to kind of nutrition, Instagram, whatever. I would never like sell myself out to go and make money. You know, like you see that gobshite Liver King, who was exposed for taking like over 12k a month worth of growth hormone and a bunch of other things. Charlatan, you know, 100 million quid he makes a year, pure charlatan, talks nonsense and just lies like so easily to the camera that you just can't take anything that guy takes seriously. That would be my nightmare. I could I'd never, like, it's so unethical. So I think I am guided by ethical principles in life in terms of being fair and honest and that sort of thing. So that's something I like about myself. Yeah.
How do you live
Sure.
with those practices? So what are some of your guiding lights, if that makes sense?
I think a big one would be that I'm vegan, which is, it's an ethical decision on my part. So for me, like, consuming animals, it doesn't fit with my moral code. I think, like, even just going back to when that kind of happened, we rescued chickens, and I remember like eating chicken for dinner and like looking out, and I thought it was so great for rescuing these chickens, you know, and then looking out and I'm like, oh, I'm eating like his mate, you know. But that would be 100% a big part of it. It's not my identity.
Yeah,
So
that was
no, it's very much not my identity. And like, even when it comes to the literature on nutrition and stuff, like I like, everyone has a bias, inherent biases that you may not even be aware of. I'm very much aware that, like, ethically, like, that's where my values lie. But I really try not to let that impact how I analyze stuff. It would be a big part of, like, my life. I think as well, just even with, like, I guess with just like even thinking about the society at large and stuff, and not necessarily politics, because I'm not particularly interested in politics. But I think like things like I would be a big advocate for healthcare for all. You know, like, for everyone. Like I think it should be guaranteed as a human right. I think housing, should be guaranteed as a human right. Things like that would be how I kind of think about bigger picture questions. Particularly when, like, you see kids growing up in poverty and stuff, and it's so sad. I find it really, really distressing. Like 1 in 6 kids in the UK are living in food poverty, so they go, like, without food or missing meals every day and things like that. I just find it just, in a civilized world, it's so horrible, you know. So things like that, I'd be very, very much for policies, I guess, that would increase people's access to food, access to healthcare, housing, that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know if that really answers what you're asking.
100% it does.
Yeah.
We all have guiding lights or principles, and I think sometimes people aren't even consciously aware of what they are. So I'm always interested to find, are people consciously aware of the decisions and what's guiding those decisions? And I do understand that people definitely learn with more experience, and as you said, like, your environment was a big factor, that things definitely do change, opinions change. And I think just through conversation, environment, and various other factors, that those guiding principles sometimes do, it's like osmosis nearly, that they kind of drift in between different schools of thought. And I'm always interested to find out where people are at today, not tomorrow or what they thought in the past, but where they are today, because there's always something to learn from people in that sense.
It's interesting because, like, you see, and again, I always bring it back when I think about football, and everyone is talked about, like you said, honesty is like a big principle for your life principle. And you think in football, when everyone thinks of an honest player, they think of somebody who runs. And then I'm kind of thinking, and he's ran all his life. So that, like, there's actually probably a lot in that, I would think, where the whole structure of your running career, so to speak, not to call it a career, but your, like, path, that kind of, like, because running is an honest sport, or like, if you don't do the yards, you're not going to get progress, whereas, like, in team sports and all and things like that, it can be slightly different. So I just find that interesting, that, like, honesty is probably linked back to the running. It's like running has to be the most honest sport, because it's like you do the work,
nice.
You get the result.
Nice.
Unless you're just injured, you can't, like, get past that, which is like my last 3 years.
Yeah,
but no, I know what you're saying.
But like, in your upbringing as a child, like, was all true. Obviously, running, like you said, was very
honest hard work. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great point, man. Running is one foot in front of the other, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, everybody can run, but nobody
I
can
can't.
run at that level.
Daly was blown out of his hole on Friday.
Stop.
No, I mean, like,
Gone.
If you're privileged to have 2 legs and then you have a road that's safe to run on, then
He's talking about 3-minute kilometers. Can barely do a 6-minute kilometer.
oh, stop, man. I've run a patch a few times and it's tough going. It's very tough.
I'll take that back. You're going on Friday.
Nice, man.
You're going on
Not the running part.
Just in case, if people don't realize, Morgan, myself, and Patrick are cousins, first cousins. So
Oh,
you
yeah.
should have mentioned that. Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
know what?
They look the image of each
huh?
other.
Do you know what?
What?
Some of my best memories in life are on holidays with you two.
Oh,
This is this can be tangent, but
Yeah.
like honestly, when I think like this is actually a bit of a on a dark note. Life these days, like, geez, I wish I was a kid.
yeah.
We were speaking
My
about this
God.
literally on the so we went on a Christmas do on what was this Saturday?
Saturday, yeah.
Mhm.
On the drive home on
Say
Sunday.
no, but
On Sunday we were talking about
we're out for your birthday.
shout out to Kinger, he's not here. But we were
Man,
just saying
Kinger,
about what was it? Yeah, when we were on the way back, you were like, "Would you ever go back to like being a kid?" And my first answer was like, "Not really, no, because I like my life now." But then we were like, "Oh, the days where we'd stay up and like play FIFA till like 4 or 5 in the morning, like it was unbelievable. It was the only thing you cared about at that one present moment, and you'll never get it back. But it was unbelievable. You did not care. The only thing I cared about was when I could get my next can of Coke and how cold it was going to be. That
Do
was
you remember we would have in the attic the whole
the fridge.
Oh.
We had the setup, like the bit of FIFA playing
Unreal.
career mode. You go through a whole career mode.
You had the two had a notebook.
We had a
of
notebook.
myself
that-
and
this is
you know
the
what?
thing.
But bringing
Go.
it back to like before training 1-to-1 ever came into being, it wasn't a shock to me at all how successful it is, because Morgan, our entire life, like growing up, was FIFA. Like when we're over at each other's houses, FIFA, writing notes, creating. Like even out in the guard, you'd be doing drills. You're like, oh, Mal Bronx me at the back post, and we'll just whip that in again.
Player.
No, but
No, what
the amount of analysis that went into like
It was
what we
crazy
did
amount of
in
detail.
FIFA.
I still have some of the notes. Do you know? I've a
Really,
notebook. I
yeah.
have to show it to you. Yeah.
Unreal.
Crazy
We do
amount
the
of notes.
stats after.
We used
every
to do
season.
stats because we were like, okay, will we keep them this year? Will we sell them? And then we'd go into detail about like, okay, who do we need to bring in? Our best claim to fame is we had Dele Alli in our squad at 16, playing the
Yeah.
10. We're like, give him a chance.
Say Lewis McGugan. Shout
Lewis
out
McGugan.
Lewis
Shout out to Lewis
McGugan.
McGugan. If
Who was he
sees
first?
him, we need to go meet
First.
him or something. We
We
need to go
actually
meet
Did
him.
he have a free kick on him?
Did he
He had a
what?
wand, didn't he?
Did he what?
Give over.
Was
Get
he
it
a
over the
was he a
wall.
lefty?
No, he's a
No,
righty.
he's a righty. Righty tighty.
Yeah, he's
I
a
remember,
player.
I had no interest in FIFA. I used to just fall asleep or watch them. Or
Gary was our
recruited as the
manager
Yeah.
once or twice,
I was
and he was like,
recruited
"Yeah,
as
sign Vincent Company."
Big budget, but yeah, no, the boys were obsessed. It was,
Obsessed wasn't the word, man. We
yeah.
were all in.
But I loved
was
our
all in.
childhood. Like
It was
going on
class.
holidays. Now, how fun was that?
Yeah,
Me,
we spent a
you,
lot of time.
Philip, and Morgie. Philip's my
Yeah.
brother.
Nintendo DS, man.
Brazil are
Yes.
2-0 up
Are they?
against Korea.
Shock.
In
Yeah,
13
that was,
minutes. Oh, Neymar scored.
That was some crack, man. It was amazing. It's I think if everybody just looks back in their childhood, hopefully there is some good memories there for most. But yeah, I mean, I was even sitting today. I was at my diary, and I put some time in over the Christmas period to just reflect, like properly, like go back. But it's such a hard thing to do. I find it kind of just stumbles, like you two in a car. It's like would you ever go back to being a kid?
That
It
was
just kind of
good, yeah.
stumbles on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to sit there and really just go back into those times.
Definitely by yourself, but it does come out like this, like having a cousin here and your best mates here and all. It's rare you do get to have an opportunity to talk about it, especially, can I say, definitely in Ireland, especially sober. Everyone wants to talk when everyone's drunk and whatever, doing shenanigans, but to just sit and talk with someone presently, very difficult to do. Well, it shouldn't be difficult to do because we're doing it right now and it can be quite simple to do, but actually wanting to talk about it. And I would have been horrible emotionally, like probably like 2 years ago. I just didn't want to talk about anything. Now I have no problem talking about whatever's going on. Do you remember we were at the wedding with Amy? And I was like, this is Leo. I'm having a great time. I was just so present, like it's so simple to just take a minute to enjoy yourself. But it is tough to do.
And we came back from our podcast. Was it a month ago? And this is like one half of the one.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
have one in the morning. Morgan comes in and he goes, it was something along the lines of, "Who am I?"
Yeah, I was like, who am I?
Sorry, what?
Yeah, like 1:30 in the morning. I was like, oh no, I was just
Who's your
debating,
man?
Like what is my like characteristics? Like what am I as a person? I was just reflecting the whole time. It was good. I needed it. I needed a conversation. It was great. I feel great
Hour
since.
long, man.
Yeah. Up until 2:30, just sitting on my bed.
With who?
G-man.
I love doing that. My sister as well.
So important to just talk like. So yeah, it was good.
I actually
Anyway.
miss. Philip obviously lives in
Yeah.
Canada for a long time. I think he went to 24 and he's nearly 30.
Ages ago, man.
30. Hardly,
30 in
bro.
April. Yeah.
Nah, he can't be in the
He'll
triple
be
digits.
30 in April.
3-0, nah, dude.
Really, am I getting that right?
Yeah,
I'm getting that right. He's 30 in April. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's only 3, yeah.
Crazy.
But
That's
I used to.
crazy.
We used to stand we used to be down in the kitchen. We'd always meet in the kitchen because the two of us would be hungry,
Yeah.
and just chat for hours.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
But so I still text him all the time,
Yeah.
but I don't get to speak to him even on the FaceTime as much as I'd like. And he's obviously he's over there, and it's difficult to come home and stuff with money and different things. So I don't see him a lot, but hopefully that changes in the next few years.
Mhm. It's very
Mm.
important.
2 extremely talented and driven individuals.
That man,
Yeah.
he's so smart.
I know, yeah. Crazy. Most
So
literate
smart.
person I know, I think. Definitely the funniest person I know. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely the funniest person I know. Hands down.
Kinger be snapping.
Oh.
I never liked G. Never liked him. This is why he didn't turn up today.
Kinger is like my day-to-day funniest guy. He is the funniest guy I know. Face-to-face who I see every week. But Philip is definitely,
He's hilarious. He's mad.
yeah, from when we were younger and stuff. He used to have like full-on worlds in his imagination.
Remember the songs and stuff we'd make?
Oh, crazy.
You know he'd be a writer anyway with all the imagination. He's
Oh,
so
man.
creative.
When you look back in it, right, and he used to make like imaginary worlds and stories and have full on character personalities, and then used to be able to write punk songs and do the drum lines, the bass lines, the lyrics, and then start to write award-winning novels
and he's an
and,
award-winning screenwriter now
and
as well.
screenwriting, and was editor-in-chief of his own
Magazine.
creative magazine. I mean, that
And he did it all from
Crazy.
scratch himself.
yeah,
'Cause
crazy.
his degree is ancient classics and music technology. I mean, you
Put
know,
them two yokes together.
just a creative genius.
Again,
in
it's
that
always the
sense.
same stuff.
He
isn't
actually
it?
is. He's
Take
so
stuff
smart.
that you're innately interested in as a child. If you really delve into it and really love it, you'll find something to do with it. Like that, we were talking about Finn earlier, just drawing something, but it's just creative and the willingness to do it. And you only understand what you like and don't like by just constantly doing it, getting different variations of it. But yeah, it's actually funny. Me and G were like, oh, that'd be a great knick-knack.
It is
of the
a good
week.
one.
That'd be a great knick-knack of the week. Well, G said it, and I was like, I'll bring it, because I remember asking the question. I still remember. And he was like, yeah, I'll do some. I'll do it. Thinking he was all cool and all back when he was 13. Am I right?
a nod of approval.
Yeah.
Hit the quick fires.
Yeah, let's hit the quick fires and get out of here. Blah. Well, we don't get out of here. You get out of here.
At Morgan's request,
Come on, drop it.
What, the question?
Yeah. Well, it's the same one we do every.
Nike or Adidas?
Neither.
Chocolate sweets or crisps?
Crisps, chocolate sweets.
What a man.
Is that me and you the same, yeah?
Crisp chocolate.
Fact.
Yeah, you're a crisp head.
Messi
I love a crisp.
or
Yeah.
Ronaldo?
Messi. And I'll tell you what, I'll say, Ronaldo loved him growing up. He
Yeah,
was
you
like,
did.
Yeah.
I was mad
You
about
did,
Ronaldo.
yeah. You loved him, yeah.
Objectively, he's not as good as Messi. I'm sorry.
I'm not asking
Plus,
objectively,
that
I'm
carry
asking
on the last few
subject.
months.
Paddy, it's not a research paper, it's a subjective question, man. Well,
Drop-
objectively,
07, bro. Going on Piers Morgan show. If you want to talk to people, talk to me. Don't go on that tabloid idiot. He's a all he is
Oh,
the
yeah.
sun.
The
That's
clickbait
him.
waiting
Here,
to
Niall, put his face on the sun, please, and just put it on the screen.
happen. The act-
He is a
Oh, Piers Morgan.
The son from Teletubbies is that.
absolute gobshite. Anyway,
Favorite book?
can I say a series of books?
Yeah, why not?
Stephen King, The Dark Tower series.
Nice. No clue what that is.
He started writing it at 19, finished
Wow.
at 60.
What?
Oh, I have heard of that.
Or
Sick.
maybe not, but I think it was 60. It was
I
around
think
then.
Luke told me about that.
First book was he started at 19. Yeah, he
Wow.
left it for 40 years or something and came back to it. He used to get people from jail writing them and please write more of the books. I read them in here and I want to see what happens in the end or something, because he
Wow.
just stopped. He said he's never going to write them again, and it came back.
It's
4
like some
years
whole
later.
universe thing, is that?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
That essentially a lot of his books are actually linked in the same universe.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
have
because the Dark
heard-
Tower is
yeah.
it's the tower itself is the nexus of all universes. Yeah. In his world, it's It the Clown. Do you remember It the Clown?
Yeah.
It and all these different
Is that
books.
a part of that Dark Tower series?
No, but it exists in one of the worlds, if that makes sense. But it's totally separate. But
Yeah.
It the Clown is a whole chapter in our young
In our life.
our young
Scarred
lives.
me. I couldn't sleep by myself for 5-6 years or something. My dad had to rub my head to sleep when I was a kid.
And then you passed it down to me.
Sound.
Philip did.
Well,
did.
you were a part of it. But
Yeah.
you were young, and you were young. Philip is the issue.
Philip was
Philip's the issue.
terrible. I remember Morgan had to go down and sleep downstairs. Oh, anyway.
Favorite movie?
That's fresh
while
out
we're
the
on-
womb I was, Pat.
Favorite movie?
Yeah.
Could I say series?
Yeah. Okay.
You have to do both. You have to do both. Give
Yeah,
one
movie.
single
Okay.
film.
One single film first.
Yeah.
Yes. Flat.
Oh my god. I'm really struggling with this.
Okay, series.
Series Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, you.
100%.
Oh, which one of them that would you pick?
I can't really pick one. Probably the second.
Second was good.
Two Towers.
Favorite quote?
Favorite quote. My God.
Yeah, the quick fires are tough.
Okay. Favorite quote.
I'm out
If
for
you
me
torture-
birthday.
Hi.
I thought you were gonna go. I'm out for me birthday.
Out me birthday. King of the Commons. Anyway, shout out to him. Hope he's doing well. Okay, favorite quote. It mightn't be my favorite quote, but it's just in my head now. If you torture the data long enough, it will confess to anything.
Oh,
That's
that was
just
class.
that's something to do with like science and like if you keep running tests and stuff, you get significant findings. And what significance means is that essentially there's like a less than 5% chance it occurs by chance. So therefore you say, oh, it's a quote unquote true finding. So that's what statistical significance means essentially. But yeah, like if you keep running tests, you're going to get spurious findings that turn out to be significant. So you have to be careful with that.
Huh?
And that's why sorry, I'm going on a tangent now. But before you go into like an analysis of something or a trial, you pre-specify what you're going to look at, and then you only look at that and run the test. And that's what you're supposed to do. So if you just keep running tests, you'll find something significant, then write your paper about that. Could mean nothing. Anyway, and there's ways around that. There's ways to correct for that multiple testing and that sort of thing. But anyway,
Yeah, that was class quote, man. Very interesting.
Now, because I have this murder sitting beside me. Do you kill insects inside or freedom?
let them go. Let them go.
Fact.
I couldn't believe hearing you in one of these weeks, giving it the
know.
big one.
I know.
Come on. He's like, the lions in the wild, he's killing me. Like, bro, we have moral agency. We're better than that. We should be.
He's
Look.
eating me alive outside, man. And you are right.
No, yeah, you agree with me. I know.
Oh,
you
yeah,
Come on,
100%.
put it
No,
there,
you
son.
are right.
Put it there.
You are right, sir. You are right. I'm not going to disagree.
New
with you.
chapter in Gary's life.
I'm not killing any more insects.
Oh, actually,
And
I got a quick fire for you.
thanks that you let them out. I appreciate that. It's a good thing.
Oh, you're awake?
What's your favourite animal?
That was my question.
Oh,
Seriously?
Yeah, I was going to say, what's your favorite animal? Thanks, no.
Sorry.
Do you know what's funny? Like, I don't really have a favorite animal. Like, I don't. Like, I love dogs. Like, I love dogs, you know,
So
obviously.
it is dogs.
Oh, I love dogs. Like, sorry, I got my little dog here on my body, you know. But I don't think I have a favorite. Like, I'm not like Philip's mad into sharks.
Yeah.
He's so terrified of them. He went great white. He went diving in the cage with them, great whites, and he was like, it's his like biggest fear is like sharks. But he wants to go and like see them. I don't think I have like one other than like I love dogs, obviously. But that sounds like such a bad answer, doesn't it?
Not really though. No,
I will
course
say,
you don't.
and
Okay.
this ties in with like veganism thing or whatever. You don't necessarily have to love them to not want to contribute to that kind of industry, you know. Like it's just more about like the rights that you think they may have or whatever, and whether you're going to contribute to it or not. Not necessarily. You don't have to like them, you know. Just like you don't have to like people, but I'm not going to kill them.
Yeah,
That is
heavy.
heavy.
Hate
But
this guy.
that's a good
Go
point.
ahead.
That is a good point. Very interesting. What's your favorite musical band or artist? Mazingers?
Representing today.
Yeah.
I was wondering if that would come up, and I was like, I'll wear the shirt. I love, you know, I love huge amount of music, and my brother Philip would have been a huge influence in terms of the type of music I like. I will say, like, Menzingers, I don't always listen to them, but like, there's a few albums. On the Impossible Past is probably like my favorite album ever. It just gives me like, it makes me feel a certain way that nothing I don't think can really hit that. And sometimes other bands like and albums do, but this is one I come back to
Oh, yeah.
like years,
I know.
and they're real, like they're growers, their songs. So if I remember listening to their songs, I'm like, it's all right. And then you go back again, and by the time like the 10th or 15th, 20th listen through, I'm just hooked. And then like, and best gig I've ever been to was Glasgow, 2017. I think it was March 2017. Me and Philip went over 6 a.m, walked the whole day, did 35,000 steps before we went to the gig. It was 6:30. We were so tired. We were drinking. We were walking through Glasgow, drinking bottles. Went to the gig in a restored church. The Dirty Nil opened. Flatliners played next,
Oh, class.
and then Menzingers capped it off. It was ridiculous, and it was like 9 o'clock when it finished. I felt like it was like 4 a.m. We were like, oh my, so good, like so good. So that's like, I'll never top that gig either. So Menzingers, there you go.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
We out.
Lethal.
Keep our lit.
Yeah.
Man spreading the whole way through. Mansplaining. Man spreading.
If
Thanks for coming on, Paddy.
yeah.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on. That was
Of
very
course,
good.
of course. I enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it won't be the last time you've gone on Sunny Gym. If you are interested in Patrick and his health and nutrition science communication, you can follow the Training 121 blog on our website, but he also has a personal Instagram page. Do you want to talk a little bit about that for you, Bounce?
Yeah, so I have a page called Just Health. It's called @just.health.info. So the last like month or so, or probably a little bit over that, I haven't posted much on it. Bar just signposting to our articles that we do every week. But it's like, I think science communications, it's a big passion of mine. I think, as I kind of mentioned earlier on, misinformation, disinformation is huge on social media. I'm trying my best to like give something a little bit more than that, and a little bit more kind of ethical, I guess. So sort of posts that I do would be centered on a lot of the early stuff as critical thinking skills, and then health and nutrition stuff, mostly nutrition. So if you are interested, follow me over there, and hopefully over the next few years you'll get some value from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. As we always say, if this is your first time interacting with the Training 121 podcast, it'd be much appreciated if you can leave anywhere up to a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. You can follow our social media pages at Instagram, TikTok, and also YouTube. And if you're a business head, LinkedIn. Other than that, thank you for listening.
You.
Thank you.